say, tell me where you really from. I ain't talking New York, I don't mean West Coast. I mean, look at your skin, so where you really from?
What's going on, everybody? Welcome and thank you for tuning into Great Wall of America, Untold Stories, a limited podcast series where we as immigrants share our stories of how we overcome the barriers facing us in this country. Today's guests are Nina Kuo and Kuo-Roser of Kuo-Roser Studio. They are two Chinese-American multidisciplinary artists that started out their career in New York in the late 70s and early 80s. Aside from working professionally together, they're also life partners, and honestly, the flyest couple that I know. I'm so grateful for their friendship and their wisdom. Here are Nina and Lorin. Nina, Lorin, good to see y'all. Thank y'all for being here.
Likewise.
How y'all doing?
It's going to be a hot spring.
It's a hot spring. Y'all just came down from Upper East Side?
No, we were doing research.
Okay.
And trying to figure out what's going on with the world.
Right.
The art scene.
Okay.
New.
Sure. Where were y'all doing research before this?
Oh, just like great libraries.
Yeah.
Like there's.
You were doing that earlier today before you came?
Wow. Nice. Actually, cool. Looking up, the stories of where people are.
Yeah.
Not social media.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, let me start off by a question I've been asking everybody. Where are you from? Where are you really from? So, Lorin, do you want to start?
Let me start out. I'm from New York. I'm an American from New York. But my ethnic background is 4 generations ago.
Wow.
Half Chinese, Southern Chinese, and half European.
Wow, okay. All right. And Nina?
Well, my parents emigrated from China.
Yeah.
And
try to talk into the mic.
My parents emigrated from China.
Yeah.
And right after the Civil War.
Yeah.
And they came here because there was so much opportunity. And they prepared their language skills, and they were totally open to everything, taking risks.
Mm. So you're from, but where are you from?
Me?
Yes.
I'm an ABC.
From
Midwest, and actually moved around a lot.
Okay.
And
where in Midwest? Let's just get specific.
Yeah, near like Chicago and the Great Lakes.
Gotcha. And then where you're really from is China.
I mean, I guess so.
Yeah. I'm playing. I'm playing with this question.
Yes.
I'm playing with this question. And so you were saying that. So your parents came. Your parents was the generation that came, and for Lorin, it was 4 generations ago.
Yes.
Got you. That's very different, and I'm the first. I'm the first one. I guess. What caused your parents to come here from China?
The best was opportunity.
Right.
To find new jobs.
And
education.
And when was this about?
In the late 40s.
Late 40s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this before or after the Cultural Revolution?
Before.
Yeah. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Because I know a lot of like my friends' families who moved here. Their family came here as an escape from the Cultural Revolution. So that's really cool that your parents kind of like was like maybe we want to see what the other side is like even before all that was happening.
Well, there were new immigration laws.
Got you.
So that's why.
Oh, I see.
Asian was like coming, educate. You had to be educated. You could get scholarships.
Right.
And they applied. They got here and went to college, and got.
This was in near
jobs.
Chicago.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
And of course the economy wasn't very good. It was during the McCarthy era.
Mm.
They had to face all kinds of discrimination in housing and
I'm gonna get to that.
Oh,
for sure.
Boy. Yeah.
What was their jobs when they came here?
Well, they had, they were students.
Right. Okay.
So they did all kinds of everything.
Right. Gotcha.
Just part-time this or whatever.
Yeah.
And, it was pretty grim.
Yeah. Yeah. Lorin, I mean, this is a harder question for you, I guess, to track back 4 generations. But which side of the family was more the Chinese side?
My mother's side.
Mother's side. Okay. Now, do you have any stories of when that side came over?
Well, I know that my great-great-grandfather worked on the railroad.
Wow.
And one thing that people assume is that when they went back to China, they were poor, but in fact, they were very wealthy compared to a lot of the fellow village people when they returned.
Because of the work and the money they had made
the gold.
Working on the railroad.
Yeah.
And the gold. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, you know, part of my song talks about the building of the railroad and how afterwards a lot of the workers either got kicked out of the country or they were treated horribly, even though they had helped build. You could argue that the Continental Railway was like the backbone of the country, right? Like
Sure.
all the oil Rockefeller was shipping back and forth after that was because the railroads was there. So, I mean, it's really cool to be able to talk to somebody who's directly descendant from that, you know. And so they went back. At what point did they come back to America? Because clearly you're here.
Well, both my grandmother and Chinese grandfather attended Berkeley. They went to college, which is really rare for someone in that generation to go to college.
Yeah.
So they were educated. And then my grandfather got a law degree from Temple University.
Okay. And but you said when your great grandfather, after working on the railroad, went back to China.
Yeah, no, that's a sad story. He died on the way back.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow.
Imagine that ship going back to China, everybody hiding their gold.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
Wow.
Yeah.
So people did find gold.
Yeah.
People took some gold back.
They were paid in gold, I think.
Paid in gold.
Some of the
very
workers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. I mean,
There weren't any banks.
there were no banks.
Yeah, I mean, you had to carry everything you had on you,
Right.
and it
But-
was
but-
so risky.
Right. I mean, at that point, the law was pretty wild too, right? Like there was no security, none of that. Like
No.
if I wanted to take your gold while you're sleeping,
That's what happened.
maybe even kill
That's
you.
were
There was
lynchings.
Right.
It was
There
pretty
were
wild. Man.
Right. I learned
Language
about
problems.
Right. So, your great grandfather was on the way back to China.
Right.
So, at what point was your family here was able to go to Berkeley? Did they leave kids here? Like, did they come back to have more kids? Like,
Well, my grandmother's father came over,
okay.
and he was a hops farmer. So from there, she was born here and grew up here,
Got it.
and went to Berkeley.
Okay, so it's two different sides of the family.
Well, yeah,
Okay, got you. Right.
maternal grandmother.
Right. And then the dad side is the European side?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. What's up, everybody? Thank y'all for tuning into the Great Wall of America podcast. I just want to take a quick second now to give a shout out to Lunar Hard Seltzer, the sponsor for this series. Some of the best people, some of the best drinks, and they're always showing out for the community. So make sure you show them some love at Lunar Hard Seltzer. Back to the podcast.
I am really proud that my grandparents went to Berkeley.
Hell yeah, as we should be. I mean, for that generation time too, you know.
But I think what's more important is that you yourself can elevate your own, I guess, your history. Even, he might have not known all the details because it's all pieced together from other family members.
Sure,
you know?
anecdotes and whatnot.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you have relatives. They're on one side and everyone doesn't mesh.
Sure, of course.
And the dialects are different, and they're different economic, situations, and rivalries maybe. So that kind of psychodrama that goes on, or kind of that like the macro family or the micro family.
Of course,
that kind of competes with each other.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to say too. That that family could be your friends, your community. You know, you build that up.
Yeah.
And you choose sometimes your family today.
Yeah. Which leads to my next question. Y'all choosing each other. How did y'all meet?
Through another friend.
Okay. I was looking
a
up
family friend actually.
I was looking up some of the information, you know. Y'all was doing work in the 80s in New York. That's where y'all met. You moved here from somewhere?
I moved from California.
Right.
Yeah, he was on the West Coast. He liked it. He liked the weather.
You didn't like the
beach.
weather?
Oh,
He
I
loved
it.
it.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he loved, that kind of, hanging out,
Yeah.
loose.
So, okay, what brought y'all separately to New York, and then how did y'all meet? Nina, you go first. What brought
real
you to
fast.
New York?
It was just, it was kind of luck. You know, he was in the arts.
Oh no, wait, but first, sorry. Why did you come to New York?
Oh, there was no jobs.
Right, back
when
home.
I was
Okay.
upstate.
Yeah, upstate. Okay.
Yeah.
That's where you went to college?
Yeah.
Okay, so you went from outside of Chicago.
No, upstate New York.
Right, but didn't you say your family was in outside
No, they
of Chicago?
traveled all around.
She must have grew up.
Yeah.
Okay.
I grew up. I'm a New Yorker.
New Yorker.
Stater.
Hell yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So you came down from upstate.
Yeah, I love snow. Upstate, tons of snow.
Lauren must have hated that snow.
Oh, I like snow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, you could
Seasonal.
see Niagara Falls
Yeah.
was like an iceberg,
Right.
and you could
It got
see
cold back then.
the drifts.
Yeah.
Your eyelashes would be frozen together.
Yeah.
You couldn't breathe. You'd have
Right.
to breathe through your ears.
Yeah. So when you moved down to New York, what kind of jobs were you looking for?
Oh, there was no work practically.
But were you trying to be an artist too?
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah. I had to be an artist because I figured I was so different from everyone.
Yeah.
Eating chop suey sandwiches. There was like maybe one Chinese restaurant upstate.
Whoa. Okay.
I mean, one Japanese
That's
place.
crazy. Yeah.
I mean, we had to go to Canada to get
Right.
things, and you weren't allowed to bring it in
Right.
at that time because it was from China.
Right.
They banned
Any
Chinese
stuff.
product.
Right. And what about you, Lauren? What made you leave Cali since you loved it so much to come to the East Coast?
Well, it was really on the insistence of my wife to be.
Okay,
She
got
really
it.
wanted to come back to New York, where her career was already established.
Okay, wait. So where did y'all meet? Y'all met in Cali?
No, we met in New York. He was
Okay.
on vacation,
Oh,
and
here
then
we go.
he had to go back, and actually that made the relationship stronger because when you don't see someone and you think, oh, that's the end of it,
Right.
but then you realize, do I need to work harder? Do I need to let it go? Or do I really give up everything? So my motto is, if you don't love that person more than yourself, you would give up everything, then that person is not worth it. And I tell that to all my friends.
Yeah.
You have to ask yourself, like right now, whether you're going to jump off that mountain for that person.
Take the leap of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I have to tell y'all something off the mic later that this is speaking to directly right now. Like the reason I'm late is related to that exact thing.
Okay.
This is for off the camera.
I mean, you know, it's like everything. A mother says, "Here's my child,"
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Where you
It's effortful.
yeah
Love is effortful.
yeah your foot
Yeah.
is on that airplane or that jet or whatever, and sometimes it's good to make a mistake.
Of course. If
Better
you can
to-
learn from that too.
Yeah, better to say no, and that's why yes, no.
Yeah. Yes or no. Yeah.
And
And I'm assuming you made that sure yourself.
no,
Oh, you didn't make that.
No,
It's one of the few ones you didn't make.
I know. No, I feel that's society today. People want a maybe. They want too many maybes.
Man, you have no idea how spot on this is to exactly
Really?
what's happening in my
Maybe
life.
because I went to Catholic school.
No, I don't know. Maybe I don't. That had nothing to do with why this is gonna line up. But
Yeah.
we'll save that for
Sure.
off the mic. So y'all met through a mutual friend. What was it like a party at a hang?
No. It was just I guess he was on vacation.
Right.
I
And
was
you were an
invited.
artist too. at the time?
Not at the time. I was mostly a musician.
Oh,
And an
well,
architect.
That's
yeah,
an
yeah,
artist.
he had a day
Both
job.
an artist.
Sure.
Yeah. That's
very,
cool.
very, funky, weird.
Still funky.
Yeah,
I said still
yeah,
funky.
too funky, too hipster.
Too cool for school.
Yeah. Well, no,
Y'all both
actually,
are-
more
both
school
are
is
too-
better.
Y'all both are too cool for school. Well, I mean, too cool for school as in like it's a phrase that like y'all are just too cool for other kids, so you hang out with each other. Yeah. I've always thought that. Since I met y'all, I've always thought y'all are just so cool. And like it's like goals, like I was telling my roommate, I was like, man, I wish I could maintain that same love for creativity, you know what I'm saying, like as I progress, So y'all met through a friend. What kind of circumstances did y'all meet under?
Well, it was just like, we were older. I mean, kind of close to 30. I mean, that's not old.
Right.
But these days,
Yeah.
You can't really, I think,
Lift this up for you just a little bit. There you go.
you can't really, I guess, shape the person that you're looking for or shape destiny.
Right.
And
Got to take what comes.
Yeah. But I think I didn't like that. I didn't like that idea of, mingling at the whatever. I mean, there were, like dating, things or, little interludes. But I think more or less,
How did y'all meet? Where did y'all meet?
Oh,
Right.
it wasn't it wasn't so like, I guess it was romantic.
Yeah.
It was pretty like I said, because it was a long distance.
Yeah.
1 year went by, writing, calling.
Right.
One visit in the summer.
Yeah.
Then we realized, okay, we got to do it. We got to put, and it helped because I didn't have a lot of job obligations.
Sure. Yeah.
You know,
Y'all both had some time. On the
yeah,
hands.
right. So
did
that
you go to
helped a lot.
Cali?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And but you love New York so much that you're like, I want to be in New York.
Yeah, I mean, it's
and
easier.
you love Nina so much, you said, I'll be in New York.
Yeah, in
with
some
you.
ways
Right.
it's cheaper, friendlier.
Yeah.
And
it was cheaper.
much
Okay, so this
cheaper.
is my next question actually that leads up to that. Was New York expensive like this back then?
No.
In the 80s?
No.
Well, what was New York like? Was it like
$100,
Slums,
$200 for rent for just regular
like a studio apartment?
yeah, but
Sure.
not this every 6 months it would double. The rent would
Right.
double. So I had $100
Right.
rent, then it went to $150.
There was like really cheap places for artists.
Right.
In
Manhattan even.
You're right in Manhattan.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And, in the village
For the
or
clubs, for the
in
people.
the outskirts of Manhattan.
So what? If right now, Manhattan is the expensive part of New York, right? Like, back then, what was like the fancy, expensive, bougie part of New York?
Oh,
Scarsdale,
Where's that?
Westchester.
yeah.
so kind of like
no, Soho. All of a sudden, like
Soho was pretty
mid
rough.
'80s,
Yeah.
late '80s, it started to get really posh. And
boutiques and
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely. And Brooklyn too, Queens. Not so much Queens, but Brooklyn was getting like pricey.
Gotcha.
So people
Wow.
went wild, and
Yeah.
they were looking for places.
Yeah.
And you could buy everything was snapped up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anything. Was
What
snapped up.
year? What year did you come to the East Coast? Do you remember?
84.
84. What was like a typical night out or day out for y'all at that time?
Oh, we would look at like everything.
Yeah.
Like clubs.
Yeah. What were
like-
some of the name of a club or two
Oh,
that y'all?
I love 8BC. We love that.
What was it called?
It's called 8BC. It was on
ABC.
8.
8
BC.
Yeah, there was
On
ABC
Between
No
Avenue
Rio.
B and C. On,
My friend had a place. It was called A's, Arlene Schloss. Then there like all over.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was like the Mud Club or like Danceteria.
Did y'all check out like the famous places like the 54s?
Not
Studio
really.
54 and all
Not
that
really,
stuff.
because that
Palladium. We used
yeah,
to
Palladium?
Palladium. Yeah,
Right,
we
right.
loved that place.
Okay. Yeah.
Great.
great
Is
architect.
that the same NYU dorm building that's on 14th Street right now?
Probably.
think
It
that's
was
what
on
happened.
14. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Isozaki designed it.
Yeah, Japanese
and,
architect.
Yeah.
No way.
And
Very cool.
It was just huge.
Right.
And they had the best. They had fashion shows or
Yeah.
events, and there was the tunnel.
Mm.
And there
That's
was,
another club, the Tunnel.
Yeah.
Area.
Yeah.
Was another-
Area was another one.
okay.
I mean, we didn't go to a lot because we realized we had to make money.
Yeah, of
things were
course.
getting pricey.
I guess that's always been the thing, right?
Yeah,
Y'all had to make money then, we gotta
7
make money
years,
now.
no health insurance.
Yeah.
We had to start to figure, maybe we need that.
Yeah.
CBGBs.
Yeah,
Mm.
right.
Oh yeah, I
Lorin,
read that
Lorin,
you had worked
yeah.
there,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
I played there.
Yeah. And what was like the friend circle y'all was hanging out
Oh,
with? Were they more like
gosh.
Asian Americans?
Both.
Both?
But
Okay.
I have to say, I hung out more with African Americans.
Yeah.
Because I felt like really close to them.
Mm.
They were like very inventive,
Mm.
and the
agree
Caucasian
on
groups
Yeah.
were kind of like snooty and little,
Yeah.
not so appreciative.
Right.
I mean, some of them they would think, "Oh, you went to Japan,"
Right.
I lived there a little bit, and I traveled there when I was younger.
Mm.
I felt that they
Talk
were
to the mic,
looking,
talk to the
yeah,
mic,
they were looking at the kind of exotic side,
Mm.
and they didn't really. It's so hard to explain, but they didn't have the gut feeling of how I think your like assimilation of Asianness, because they were Caribbean or African American,
Yeah.
or they had the same kind of colonialist.
Right.
And we talked about that many times. And I worked with Just Above Midtown.
Yeah.
There was a big show at Museum of Modern Art
Yeah.
recently. So that was like an incubator for ideas of performance art,
Right.
film, experimental
Right.
mediums. So I fit in there. They love my work,
Right.
and I didn't get that from the other.
The
'cause
Asian American.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, pretty much. They
Right.
they were kind of doing more, I think, like protest art, or
Right.
they were doing like folk craft art,
Mm.
if you want to label that.
Mm.
And then
Just stuff that's sounds a little safer than what you were doing.
yeah,
huh?
yeah, too safe, kind of too decorative,
Right.
and too kind of maybe like pictorial posters or whatever,
Yeah.
printmaking, and like.
Yeah.
So I needed to get away from that,
Yeah.
and it was very.
And you thought that the African American community was more creative.
Oh yeah,
more
yeah.
pushing the edge and
They
pushing
were
what was
testing it.
interesting.
They were
Right.
like real sassy, So
Right.
we worked with some of the best people,
Yeah.
and I was so influenced by their way of saying, "Oh yeah, take some more risks,
Yeah.
get it out there.
Right.
You don't need a whole bunch of money."
Well, you could almost
know.
you could almost argue that like the African American community had nothing to lose, right? Like they were so marginalized.
Right,
That
right,
their
right.
way of creativity of building for themselves was to make something out of nothing.
Right, and the women too
Right.
were so downtrodden,
Right.
because they were expected to make certain, that type of stereotyped art, or
Yeah.
they weren't getting the jobs, or they weren't getting the successes their white counterparts.
Yeah.
So that was kind of comparable to what I felt when I came here, and I met a lot of people from Basement Workshop,
Okay.
and they were doing, research into what you were saying.
Right.
Where is the history of Chinese Americans? And
Right.
that was essential, because that was the largest pool of people here in New York,
Right.
Asian, labeled as Asian Americans.
Got you. And what about you, Lorin? When you first came to New York, were you just hanging out with whoever Nina's friends were?
Pretty much, I wasn't that active in a lot of the Asian American communities. I was still more focused on rock and roll and.
Got it. And how did you get into rock and roll and like music? I'm so curious as a fellow musician.
I just always loved it. And when I was in California, I met Bo Diddley, and I was really influenced by him.
Wait, but when you say you always loved it, like you weren't coming out of the womb singing. So what was like the earliest memory that you have of being like, I like whatever this I'm hearing, and then also like I want to do that?
Well, I was thinking of the radio when I was like a preteen. I'd be listening to rock radio.
Got you.
That really was the beginning. I
and
think.
and like, you know, if you had to speak to what spoke to you in the music, like what did it make you feel like?
He went to Jamaica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I spent summer there, and
when he was really young.
My host had a open door amphitheater. They were Chinese Jamaicans.
Yeah,
but this was later on.
No,
this is in the '60s.
Oh, okay. So when
there were some fabulous like ska and reggae bands that I heard then.
Right. But I mean, like for me, for example, for me, the reason I was attracted to hip hop is because it like I felt like it gave me some sort of way to express myself, and that's why I was very much obsessed with it. You know, like what do you think was attractive to you about rock and roll?
I love the blues, starting with the blues.
Got it. Okay.
And then my dad brought back a tube tape recorder, a Sony tape recorder from Japan. And I started experimenting and layering tracks.
Nice.
And then I started getting into experimental music.
So that was like kind of the beginning of you creating and recording music almost.
Yeah.
Right. And tell me about architecture. What is how did that interest you?
Well, my mom's an artist. She's a painter, and my father was a businessman and a diplomat. So I sort of thought that architecture would be like in between those two positions.
Right.
Sort of half artistic, but also involved with science and safety and engineering.
Regulations, rules, and all of that.
But they didn't allow him to have a TV.
What do you mean? Who didn't? Oh,
he
parents?
grew up with no TV.
That's probably bad. Probably better for you.
I mean, that's all I did when I was. Yeah, but they wouldn't let us out of the house.
Yeah, I mean, like
we just watched every single show.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I think for my generation, like the thing that we like to be nostalgic about is like, I remember when we were kids and we went out the house, you know, left the house, you know, and yeah, I think that's probably a blessing in hindsight, you know, like, yeah, I think you know, kids now being bombarded by the screen every day, like I can't imagine that's, you know, too good for stuff, you know. So what got you into other types of artistry outside besides rock and roll?
Okay, well, architecture, I had to develop a digital means of previewing buildings, so I learned how to create in 3D.
Okay, what was the program back then?
It was Autodesk.
Autodesk.
Yeah.
Never heard of that. That's awesome. Because now people know like Python.
Oh, it was
they
so
know like all this other shit. Like
it was very costly.
Yeah, I bet. Recording music back then too was probably crazy too. Right? Getting
yeah,
studio space.
Nobody had a Betamax.
Right.
Nobody had even a Xerox machine.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, everything's taken for granted now.
Yeah.
You know.
And what was like the earliest artistic work that you did when you first got to New York? Or were you experimenting with art back in Buck Upstate?
Oh yeah.
What were you doing back upstate?
I studied with like Judy Chicago.
Okay.
And Robert Longo.
Tell me who these people are.
Oh, she is like the powerhouse of feminist art. You know, from
Judy
Chicago. Yeah. And she has a huge dinner party. You know, it's all about feminist history.
Installation in the Brooklyn Museum.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
So
were you a part of that?
Yeah. I saw that. So I'm in that.
Right.
In that archive.
Yeah.
And you know, what an honor. And you know, I guess, you know, working with like Hall Walls, there was this experimental gallery with Cindy Sherman and Robert Longo. So, you know, they were my classmates.
And what was growing up? What was some inspiration that made you want to, you know, because Lorin said his mom is an artist. You know, you could say there was some influence there. You know, what about you?
Oh yeah, my family's artists too.
Oh no way.
Yeah.
Okay, what kind of stuff did they do?
Oh gosh, everything almost. Printing, jewelry,
Wow.
pottery. Sculpture,
Stained glass.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Man.
going to church. We were like so devout.
Right.
Because it was. I think it kind of forces you to be disciplined.
Sure.
To be very grateful and harmonious.
Mm-hmm. I think I used to be in a gospel choir, so I was in a lot of churches, and I definitely think whatever it was, being in those environments, it gave me something, some sort of spirituality that kind of, in hindsight, maybe at times when I was down or confused, maybe Joshua fit the battle of Jericho. Those moments kind of like, I was like, something is happening here, that helps me see through, know. And what was there like a big Asian artist scene in the 80s when y'all were there?
In New York?
In New York.
Well, I started meeting up these people at, these Asian American.
Were they Chinese? What were they like?
Yeah, they're mixed. Mostly Chinese,
okay.
Korean,
Right.
A little Vietnamese,
Right.
Japanese Americans.
Right.
Not so much the new immigrants because they
Sure.
kind of hung out with the other institutions or other, they were more, I guess, comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
And I felt there was this rapture of, well, let's become this, like this, I mean, they call it collective, but it's kind of like these self-made artists that said, we need, gallery shows, we need to make some kind of events, curate our own performance like you, bringing groups of really talented people, test your mental and physical self, just like just above Midtown, and how it's going to parlay that into your maturity, your the stability that you're going to build for a lifetime. It's not about commercial. Although some were really into commercials, they were selling, they were getting noticed.
Sure.
And many of them are very very accomplished blue chip artists, and they had very some of them ran off into big I guess universities or institutions
to teach and whatnot.
Yeah, teach
right.
whatever work, administration.
Yeah.
So that kind of like steps, step by step, gave people the confidence or the camaraderie that goes
to
into
build that scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're saying like there were some people that was like had commercial success, but there were also a lot of people that was just building the brick, like building the foundation.
Sure. A lot of people,
right.
Just couldn't do it because
right. they didn't have the passion for it, right? Like
no,
if there was no success.
I mean, there were many people that had breakdowns.
Right.
Or family obligations, or they
sure,
and a lot of sad stories. It
sure.
wasn't that you could be, living in some great loft or some rundown, Lower Side apartment or squat. A lot of people did that too, and they would go on rent strike or they would divert their careers in so many ways. So everything was possible.
Right. I think one thing that I'm realizing is, perhaps for, Lorin, because I noticed that when you were saying and doing your intro earlier, you're like, I'm American from New York, and I realized during this whole process of talking to different people that the Chinese American experience is so varied.
Sure.
And for me, my first time really focusing on my Asian American identity was the COVID couple years, right? Like where our community was pushed to an edge, and I'm like figuring out what to do, and then realizing, oh, I need to learn about my own history, blah blah. Because prior to that, I just thought myself as Chinese. You know, I was born in China, my family's in
But
China,
you're not,
right?
but you don't have anything near any other Chinese person I know, Chinese American or
Right,
even
well, see,
Asian.
well,
You're
I mean-
totally unique.
Well, I mean, so like, but see, that's the thing. Like, I thought everyone who was Chinese in America had this complicated understanding of who they are. But you know, there's some people that I talk to. They're just like, well, you know, I'm American. Yeah, I was born in America. My parents are born in America. You know, and was Asian American or Chinese American a label back then, or is that more of a thing in recent years?
Well, I think that started in the 60s.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
But I know sometimes when people would be bugging me to know where I really am from,
Right.
I would say that I was indigenous, you know,
Right.
because all of them are not really Americans, you know.
Right.
They came here and the Indians were already here.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So people do bug you sometimes.
Sometimes.
Right. Yeah. They'll be like, they'll ask you where you're from, and you'll be like, oh, I'm from New York. They'll be like, right, but what about before that?
Sure.
Yeah. Does that make you? I mean, like, maybe my generation is just sensitive, you know, or like this topic is very heated. But does it make you feel like anything when people like want to do that? Want to be like, you know, where you from? When you tell them, oh, I'm from here, they're like, right. No, but not that. But where you really from? Like, does that make you feel anything?
Well,
both of you can answer this.
Well, I brought this article on microaggressions.
Yes, I had that written down actually. My question is like, y'all must have faced some real direct racism instead of today's microaggression of like, where you really from?
Yeah, because this professor, Kevin Nadell, his book on why do we have to subject ourselves to this kind of either body language or this kind of subtle treatment, and that occurs, I think, across many, multiple. Maybe we're doing it. We don't even.
For sure.
You know.
I think so too. I don't think when people ask that, I don't think they mean harm, right?
Well,
but I think it's a more of like a built-in.
It can be. I think it's all in the interpretation.
Right.
And it definitely is this kind of bullying.
Right.
I mean,
because white people move here all the time from other places, and they don't get asked that,
when
right?
you ask these same people where they came from,
right? They'll say America.
They're usually shocked.
Yeah. You're right. But that's what I mean, right? Like, I mean, like, we'll get asked that question. And for you, you'll get asked the question, and your family been here for 4 generations.
Yes.
Like a white guy that could be asking you the question, his family could have moved here from Germany like 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
You know? So that's what I mean. Like, white people don't get asked this. Why?
Right.
Why is that? We built the railroads, right? And like, so for me, it's like, it's not even like I want like anything from white people or, whatever, the people that are asking questions. For me, this whole process is for me to have the confidence when I'm in a room and I'm the only person Chinese person.
You have to deal with the stereotype.
Well, that's the thing. I'm tired of doing the work for other people. I'm tired of being like,
absolutely.
What he's asking is really like where my ethnicity is. So it's like sometimes I just fuck with them. They're like, where you from? I'm like, your mom's vagina.
That's great.
And they'll be like, what? And then like I was like, no, I'm trying. Chinese,
or you came out of a tomato, or you came out of.
But you know what I mean? I'm tired of doing the work for them, right? Like, I'm tired of trying to like understand from like your point, like
right.
Because you can just go out straight out and just be like, hey, what's your ethnicity? But for me, this is more curious, right? Because I think all of our successes is important to share, but it's also important to share our struggles and how we overcame those. What were some of the moments that y'all felt othered because of the way y'all looked, and how did those moments make you feel? And how do you think you have either internalized or tried to, overcome those moments? You could give a specific example if you remember.
Well, I think, going back to this
Yeah.
direction of, the labeling, the kind of, who you are.
Labeling as in like calling you a chink?
Facial, the kind of either ageism or
Right.
your name, how much power do you have in your name. So the tokenism is really where it's at sometimes in the career, a stage or in the art stage. Today I think it's more prevalent that they look at you as an Asian artist. Before they would just say, "Oh, your work is great," or "Your work doesn't fit in." Now you're more in this geographical pool. You swim around. You get to this kind of like entrapment. So maybe because there are more artists, more international, I guess, stepping stones and kinds of
Pioneers.
Yeah, pioneers
Y'all-
or
like
competitors.
Right.
Competitors waiting to do something.
Yeah.
To make you who you are or who you're not.
Right.
So I think it's a very kind of sensitive time that we've gone through the last decade.
years, right? Last decade.
The pre-COVID, the COVID,
Right.
2020.
Right. But that really
and
started with
seeing
the
you
Trump
when-
stuff.
We saw you doing your tours, and you were talking. When you were doing your public music and your performances, we saw.
Yeah.
We could feel that that Asianness is changing, and sometimes you're much more attractive to a non-Asian audience.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they're dying to know who
I have
you are.
noticed that. I have noticed that when I first started rapping, being Asian was like, oh, what's he got to say?
Exactly.
Now it's like, I wonder what he got to say. It's like there's a change.
Yeah.
So like because you brought up Asianness is changing. Can y'all both speak to what exactly feels different between being Chinese American now in America versus in the 70s, 80s? If there's a difference y'all can point to.
Oh, there's so many things.
Just give me one or two of what the difference between.
you can make the tools of executing work is more
But
sophisticated.
how do you feel as an Asian person? Not like the stuff that you're able to do, like.
Oh God, I just think that you have to be.
What I found really irritating back in the day was you're getting attacked for something you had nothing to do with. You didn't choose to be Chinese or Chinese American.
Right.
So I kind of reveled in becoming a hippie, choosing something and taking grief for something that I choose. So I pay the price, It made me feel better,
Whoa, hold on a second. So instead of subscribing yourself to a pain that you don't understand, you chose to subscribe yourself to another kind of identity.
Take my punishment.
And take that punishment.
Oh,
Because at least you know where that's coming from,
Yeah.
type of thing. Wow. I mean, you could say that's one way of like, internalizing it and then like trying to find ways to get over that, right? Like, that's a powerful example. Yeah.
But I also think there were a lot of down years.
Yeah.
The economy was so terrible.
Yeah.
Whatever, 90s,
Back then,
80s,
right.
90s,
The economy seems to be always terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible now. God damn it.
No, it's going real fast up and then real fast down.
Yeah,
Where creative jobs or the treatment at the job place.
Yeah.
You had to really keep quiet.
Yeah.
Be like a little,
I get that. kind of hide it, make yourself a little small.
I mean,
fit in
I didn't want to
right?
say, but you're enslaved by what you have to do, and you just grin and bear it. I mean, I think
what is that? What you have to do to become American, right? That's what you mean.
To be anything, to be self-sufficient.
Sure.
I when I was taking all these courses, American studies, we would read like Kate Millett, Germaine Greer, talking about women and their ability to choose, and it's so basic. I mean, you don't get that in regular schools, and families maybe too busy to not able to.
I don't think they even know.
Yeah. It's very hard. Yeah, and it's so your ability to like invest in yourself, with real funds or real ways of handling your future, which is like own property or that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I think those things taught me real early on that you gotta like look at the future in that way too, not dreaming, not with stars in your eyes, but and learning to live with rejection. That is so key. So many of my mentors told me, like knowing that it's okay, keep going, and you could stand still for a while. Yeah. You can float for a while. You don't need to, constantly be knowing what you're doing. You have a path, but not always be in the driver's seat. But knowing you're gonna have to pay the price. You're gonna have to suffer. And that was my motto too. It's like a kind of Catholic feeling.
I mean, that's quite Buddhist too.
Yeah,
right? Like learn how to suffer. I think this is something that's
atonement.
Atonement. This is something that's more personal. I mean, talking about atonement, he's talking about atonement too with the hippie lifestyle, right? Like, I think for me, that's learning to suffer is something that has. I mean, I think that's very counterintuitive initially for like a human to understand. Yeah. Like because I think we're brought into this world. We're being provided safety, comfort. You're taught to, live, go get after stuff so you can live a pleasurable life. So like, growing up, you think like you're supposed to avoid pain, avoid suffering. But
less is more. That's what.
It's part of being an artist, though.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, but even outside of being an artist, there's pain in life. And for me. That's something that I didn't realize until, very recently in my life, that there were many things that I was doing was trying to avoid pain and avoid suffering. But in avoiding that challenge, I ended up building a bigger pain on top of that. That bigger pain is more painful than had I just faced whatever problem or whatever hard thing I was supposed to do, So learning to suffer, living with suffering, and what you just said, I mean, I think that's a very, that's a gem. But until somebody had the life experience to put that into context of what that means to learn to suffer, I think that's very counterintuitive, But I'm glad he said that because I totally agree with that, I think for me, again, I've always just thought myself as like a Chinese person living in America. When I saw all the people in the Chinese community being attacked because of COVID, that's when I had like a sense of urgency to, okay, what can I do to make a change? Well, how do I make a change? I have to kind of know what's wrong first, right? Like, so, I'm learning about the history. I see people in my life too, other people in my generation who are Asian Americans, whether they're immigrants or born here, they're starting to have the urgency of learning about our past. I mean, I never seen that before. And to be honest, since, the 2-3 COVID heavy years, that's kind of faded away as well, right? Was there another point in y'all's life that was like a moment where the Asian American community was like, we need to like, buck up and learn our history and get down?
I think it was the Vincent Chin, the murder of Vincent Chin, and also Detroit, right? And also the Private Danny Chen incident in New York.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was 2012 when he
this
was a
is
soldier.
recently.
Yeah,
Okay,
he was a
got it.
soldier.
He was a ranger in Afghanistan.
Okay,
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
you.
and-
Okay, I think I remember this.
Yeah,
now.
by
Yeah.
his sergeant.
Okay.
And anyways,
Yeah.
But what about like prior to 2000s? What like what's COVID? I mean, could y'all observe that during COVID there was like a surge of like let's learn about ourselves?
oh yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
What was there another moment like that besides the Vincent? Was the Vincent Chin moment big like the COVID moment?
Yeah.
It was like that too, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
Unified
bigger maybe,
Asian
bigger
American
because people's attention
Mm,
was
right.
so immediate,
Right.
you know, and it wasn't just the Chinese, you know, and now we have many more
When you
Asian
say-
immigrants.
When you say it wasn't just the Chinese, what do you mean? Like other immigrants also felt
Well,
the pain of Vincent Chin?
Chin, you know, was Chinese American, and you know they thought he was
Japanese, right?
Japanese,
Yeah.
like like because the Japanese car makers,
Sure.
you know,
Right.
and Detroit.
Right.
So that was a whole different kind of situation,
Yeah. Yeah.
and Asian American organizers and groups came together, the media and so forth,
Mm-hmm.
and they I think that was instructive. They
Mm-hmm.
realized it didn't matter whether you were from Taiwan or you were from-
Korean, Chinese,
right?
Japanese,
Exactly,
whatever. Right.
Nisei or whatever.
Right.
We needed a pool,
Mm.
you know, like the black.
Black Panthers.
Yeah,
Sure.
or just any of the black, you know,
Coalitions.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That they needed to educate
Mm.
and to prepare, you know, the kind of communities that they deserve.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
not just, well, we want justice for Vincent Chin.
Right.
We don't have enough legal teams.
Right.
We don't have
How do we
the
prevent
needed-
another Vincent Chin from
exactly
happening? Right.
journalists,
Yeah.
anything.
You know, that's like a conversation I have with my friends in the music industry too, because like, you know, we talk about like, man, one day there's gonna be a first Chinese rapper to win a Grammy, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then the conversation comes back to, well, who's the gatekeepers, and why do we expect them to let us in? You know, so until more Chinese kids or Asian kids growing up wants, you know, it's great that there's a lot of us that wants to be in front of the camera now. But until more of us wants to be behind the camera and calling the shots, you know, which is where you're talking about building the community that we want to have instead of being like, give us that. Because who's going to give us that, you know? So.
And it's hard. Many Asian Americans don't support the other fields.
Right.
That's what irritates me. So you said
Yeah.
to me the big hot question,
Yeah.
what is it different from the 70s, 80s,
right.
90s,
Yeah.
and today?
Yeah.
That is the hot answer.
So there is more support within the community now than before.
I'm not sure.
I think
gotcha.
it's the opposite.
The other way around.
Yeah.
Wow. So there is more divide. Well, not more divide, but there's less support within the Asian communities than before.
That's how I feel it.
Depends on
Okay.
what you label as support.
Right.
You know?
Is it that like nowadays people function on a more scarcity mindset? Like if other people get theirs, I'm not gonna have enough for me.
Could
So
be.
let's let's look out for myself.
Yeah, could
Whereas
be.
back then, you know, before like the whole Asian American, Chinese American community was able to take off like today, there was more of like you know, we're in this struggle together. Let's share.
There was more, you know, camaraderie when there's more positions and fewer people going for those positions. Like if there's just a limited number of artists in a town,
Right.
they will assemble and they will, you know, help each other.
Right.
There's more of a community of artists.
Sure.
And I think a lot of that is broken down because there's so many artists.
So many artists, but I'd imagine, and you know, there were few artists at the time in hindsight. But I'm sure at the time it felt like, you know, there was other artists out there and sure and whatnot. But you know, and you could argue that there more artists means a bigger community, right? It technically mean there should be more support. Do you feel like you know, this is actually, I'm jumping across, but do you feel like social media has played a role in breaking down communities instead of building communities?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I feel the same way, you know, like.
Well, yes and no.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of it's a false kind of fence.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's a bridge, sometimes it's a
Pull it a
fence.
little
Yeah.
closer to it,
And I think also you had mentioned what that label of artist is. It's so much easier to become this quote artist with the tools, you know, the iPhone or any of that.
Yes.
You can paint.
The barrier of entry is low.
Yes. Yeah. Very low entry.
Very
I like
low.
that.
Yeah.
And you know, you
I feel the same way, man. Like nowadays, I mean, I had this compares nothing to getting studio time in the 90s, right? Like, cause I'm sure that was expensive, scarce, you know. But yeah, I like
still is.
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
I
like
think
for me,
so.
like for me, like I caddied for 3 summers. You know, I bought my own equipment. I started recording myself.
Yeah, used.
But nowadays,
borrowed.
Nowadays it's even easier than that now. You know, like nowadays you do stuff on the phone, right? Like but so much so, like nowadays
AI.
There's a lot of rappers, they don't know how to plug in a microphone. They don't know how to mix their own vocals. And I look at that too, I'm like, the barrier entry is too low. But sometimes when the barrier entry is too high, maybe there's people with great ideas who are very like intuitive, creative people, but just not good with logistics and execution. If the barrier entry is too high, they might be discouraged from expressing themselves. But because it's lower now, we might be getting stuff that's good that normally we wouldn't get. But the opposite side of that is there's a whole bunch of shit as well.
Yeah.
But like what y'all were saying, but back then, to be an artist, first of all, you probably weren't making money to start with from your art.
Right.
Now you had to come up with money to make art. You know, like so that was definitely, I feel like back then, a more self-selecting kind of situation, right? Like,
I mean, I think for institutions or for those that go through the academic, you know, the quote academic style of education, there is no guarantee, you know, and yet you have to do so much more experimentation, and you have to really be like healthy mind and healthy will, and you know, it's not easy to have that kind of openness, you know.
Yeah, I hear that. And I also think, like, you know, another reason why communities felt realer back then is because you had to be face to face to build that community. And there's no other way, you know, like you call somebody's phone, if they weren't home, you just couldn't reach them, you know, like, so I think.
I mean, you same here, I think too, you know, the inundation of technology and that kind of, where do you find who's going to be your audience? Is it social media? Is it the website or the, you know, whatever, the local, or is it just, you know, slotting yourself?
I have a good friend named Cody. He goes by a name Kaz Moon. He's a singer, and he's never been a big social media person. And, you know, we were just having this conversation the other day. He says, you know, I held off on social media so long. Now we're getting to a paradigm where having social media is not cool anymore. So I've basically stuck it out. Yeah, he's like, I basically stuck it out long enough for it to come full circle. And now I'm that cool artist that don't really use social media. You know, I was like, you're right. You know, I think you're right. I think you did stick it out enough where now everyone is kind of like sick of the social media stuff, you know. And it's more refreshing that someone's like, oh, you don't use social media? That's cool. But, you know, I think to an extent it is a tool. And I think to an extent, like, if you use it just to whatever capability that you want to, that's the best part. I feel like a lot of people have social media, but then they get stressed out because they don't use it the way they see everyone else is using it, you know? But I think the important thing is finding out how it works for them. Then they can have fun with it, you know, instead of feeling pressure to, I got to make this, I got to do that because other people are doing this, you know?
I saw a reconstruction on YouTube of an 80s hit.
Okay.
And I was talking to another musician friend about this, how meticulous it was and how difficult. Like, you had to construct custom interfaces to have one synthesizer company talk to another one. It was just so complicated.
Right.
But then it made me realize how much work went into this song, and
Right.
just because it was so hard, the song is like really good. It's
Right.
really, really polished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this idea of like recording on tape and stuff back then, you had to get it right before you just like threw that tape on. You know, like nowadays I can do 1,000 takes at no cost, except maybe my time. You know, but back then, like you said, like because how meticulous it is, in order to get all those steps right and not redo them and waste all that money, you had to be good. You had to be
But
good.
you shouldn't give
Yeah.
anything away. Your music,
Yeah.
you know, the kind of aura that goes
But
with
we don't know
it.
how to suffer. That's what we're talking
Well,
about.
no, it,
You know, like
it-
like for me, I have been there where like I don't want to delay, where I don't want to delay the gratification. Right? I make something, I'm in that moment, I love it, I put it out, and then a week later, I'm like, oh fuck, I should have sat on that a little longer. You know, but the barrier of entry is so low in making and releasing music. It's easy to do that. You know, back then when you had to put a lot more money into something, it's not that you don't want to give it away. You couldn't give it away. You know, you had to spend the time and money. Now you could give things away because you're like, well, I'll give this one away. If it doesn't work, I'll make another one. You know what I mean? Nowadays when people make songs, they're like, I'll put this out. Oh, it doesn't work. I'll make another one. It costs nothing. But back then, if you spend all that money making a record, spend that money putting it out, printing it, you know, it out, and it didn't work, you didn't have the nonchalantly like, oh, let me just do that all over again. You know, so you had to really put in the work and think about it. You know, that's how I feel. You know, again, the barrier of entry. You know, like higher and lower. Let's see, what's in it? Oh, this is the Kuo-Roser studio. Right, just so people know. You know, am I saying that Kuo?
yeah,
Kuo-Roser
yes.
studio. And have y'all done any? I've done some of the research, but have y'all done any stuff together?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Can you tell us about one?
Yeah. Like our video experimentations where, you know, we use live and CGI and
Right.
and his sound works.
Yeah.
And you know, I paint some things and he'll like make all kinds of like digital. You explain it.
Renderings.
Well,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
she'll do a lot of the texturing and
Yeah.
videos that real videos that appear in the CGI work.
Got it.
So there's like hybrid works.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of your stuff, it's almost like hybrid work. You know, like it's a lot of abstractness. You know.
Sure.
I mean, for people that don't know, like, you know, these two people here, they do a lot of things. You know, the last video I got from Lorin was him playing saxophone at a gig. You know, he does 3D. You know, and Nina's always showing up at my shows with custom shirts made for me,
Yeah.
paintings.
Oh yeah, it's great.
I mean, you know, all those moments have always been so touching. You know, like that's why when I shot that video, New York made me. It felt important for y'all to be there, and I'm so grateful for y'all showing up for the takeoff touchdown video.
I love that.
And then that video, the
Love that
director
song.
screwed that up. And then I even asked you for more time to come and shoot more,
Oh,
and we
that's
still
great.
didn't put that out. I'm just very grateful, and I'm touched that y'all would give me y'all's time like this, you know. And yeah, just want to throw that in there before we continue any further.
we
you know?
felt that, you know, just all that creative people from all over West Coast, they were splendid.
Yeah. What was the first thing that we met at? Was it like an Asian Society thing?
Yeah,
Asian
you were
Society in
China
the museum,
Institute,
right?
yeah.
yeah,
in the museum.
Yeah. You were
I was in a
performing.
suit.
Yeah, the panel talk.
Yeah. That's right. I was trying to think. I was like, I'm pretty sure that was the first time I bumped
And it
into
was a
y'all.
small gathering, which
It was a
was
small
real
one,
intimate.
yeah.
And
That's when we first heard 3 Days in Chengdu.
Yep. Yeah. Shout out to Zach. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was so romantic. It was like a wonderful kind of sojourn into, I think, everyone's sense of of what, China
Yeah.
and the kind of landscape. I
Yeah.
felt, that whole like Sichuan landscape,
Yeah.
the kind of artifacts that you see from that area,
Yeah.
the people, the kind of like the culture, food, everything, the
Yeah.
smells.
Yeah.
It was just like totally
Yeah.
enthralling.
Right. Have y'all ever had the pleasure of going to Sichuan?
No.
Not yet.
No. But we have gone back to China quite a few times, and
Okay.
I've collected instruments from China, which I
Gotcha.
like to run through Western style electronics.
Wow.
So we just the resonances,
Yeah.
just somehow it's in your memory,
And what was the first time y'all went back? Well, separately. What was the first time you went back to China?
Oh, real early.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you were like still young,
No,
like a kid.
no, we weren't allowed to.
First one back in 40 years from her family to go back.
Oh,
And
okay.
they were just so happy to see her.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, but that was
80,
such distant
80.
family too, right?
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like there was no memory of each other, right? It was just more like
Yeah.
we're related. Yeah.
40
I
years
never
ago,
met them.
but-
I never met them. And
That's
and then
wild. Where in China was this?
in Shanghai, Beijing.
Okay.
Yeah.
In Shanghai and Beijing.
Yeah.
Okay. And what was your first time going back? And where
Well,
did you go?
I went back to, first we went back to Beijing,
Okay.
and later we went to the place where her family was. And
Yeah, and the expo
Mm.
and the Olympics. We went.
Sorry, Nina. I keep telling you.
the Beijing Olympics
Right,
and
right.
Shanghai Expo was
Yeah.
out of this world.
awesome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was that the first time y'all went back?
No,
Okay, got it.
that was like
A couple times
yeah,
later.
yeah.
Got you. And was there any like
in Hong Kong, of course.
yeah.
It's like
I love
really,
Hong Kong.
yeah.
I love Hong Kong.
I mean,
Whatever's
it's such
happening
a-
between,
Yeah.
I don't. I hope they figure it out because I love Hong Kong. But
the old Hong
yeah.
Kong is gone. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
the
I mean that's
whole-
interesting because when I go to Hong Kong, it still feels quite nostalgic to me. It still feels like there are lots of parts of Hong Kong. If you took a photo, maybe throw a little filter on it. I mean, that could look like
Oh
a
yeah,
long time.
1920.
Yeah.
I just did a collab with a Chinese opera singer from Hong Kong,
Oh, awesome.
Eliza Lee, and it's really very modern and very cool.
What kind of collab was it?
Well, I did the music using Asian instruments, and it's more like contemporary.
Okay.
But she did the libretto, and she's singing in Cantonese,
Wow.
and she's like
Cantonese opera.
she's an opera star. Yeah,
Wow.
so that was fun.
Is that out?
No, I haven't
Okay.
put it out yet.
Okay. So it's gonna be released under you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. So well, going back, you went to see like some of the family, stuff. Like, did you ever have any thoughts of like, man, maybe like living in Asia?
Oh
like-
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, I guess because we don't speak fluent Chinese
Sure.
or any of the other Asian languages,
Right.
so that's pretty hard.
Right.
And
Did your parents speak Chinese growing up?
oh sure,
Okay.
sure. And,
And was there like emphasis on you should learn it too, or was it
sure,
more like
but then there weren't teachers,
right?
and it was pretty rigorous,
Right, yeah,
and
for
we didn't
sure.
really need to speak,
For sure.
Chinese.
I was-
We were kind
like,
of
was-
resistant to it.
Right. Was there a resistance to it because like you're like, well, I'm American.
Yeah,
Right,
definitely,
right. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
And
But do you feel like there's a difference in self identity now, where you're like, maybe back then you felt less like. Maybe back then you cared less about the Asian side, and now you care more about the Asian side.
sure.
Okay.
I think because we're surrounded by Chinatown
Sure.
or the global businesses, there's
Yeah.
many more entrepreneurial people.
Yeah.
It
Oh.
makes you a little glamorous, I
Sure.
suppose.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
we wear Asian inspired clothes,
Yeah, yeah.
or we have a little bit of that funky Asian.
Oh, this is when y'all were living downtown.
Anytime.
Okay, got it. Yeah,
even
yeah, you said.
even in Japan, wearing the kind of trendy Japanese,
Right.
those great fashion people.
Sure.
They're so nostalgic, but
Yeah.
kind of that people revere
Yeah.
that Japanese fashionista look.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
for sure.
whether it's that there's a name for it.
A lot
During
of-
that time in the
Okay.
90s
Uh-huh.
when Comme des Garçons came out, right? Kobo.
Oh, Comme des Garçons been around for that long, huh?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I was in a magazine with Izzy Miyake,
Oh, wow. Hell yeah.
with Parco.
Mm.
So, you know, he had just started his new line, and everybody was like raving about, you know, all the music
Mm.
and the kind of like trendsetters
Mm.
that wasn't happening in LA or New York.
Mm.
It was really coming from Japan.
Right.
You know,
right,
it
right.
was the new wave of I think, sophistication.
Those Japanese synthesizers were so
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, everything. You know, technology. It was the coolest period, and you know that Renaissance kind of like dripped over here slowly, and you know there was that LA look and the Memphis mulatto look that came from Italy and so forth.
Wow. Okay.
So I worked with some galleries, Japanese galleries, and they were fabulous.
That's
you know,
awesome.
I worked with these curators and writers,
yeah.
and they were part of this new wave group. So I think you were saying, where is that Asian American? It was Asian American for me was, you know, Asian in New York, Asian, you know, kind of like adoption of whether it's shared by black culture, you know, their sense of, well, kung fu or, you know, being in these films
Yeah.
that they wore these, you know, muscle T-shirts and with the graffiti look.
Yeah.
And they kind of like emulated this kind of like ruffian Bruce Lee, you know, kind of, you know, like tough, you know, macho thing. But they also had this kind of like woman that was a little bit of like a superwoman, you know, from the manga stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
So, you know, if you go to Japan, and even now you go to Korea,
Yeah.
you see, they say, you know, it's the new Tokyo. It's a new, you know, like K-pop, the K, you know, whatever,
Yeah.
the new pop.
Yeah.
You know, I think that pop language, that pop, you know, aura, whatever it is this kind of like simulation, and what you do, you meld things together, and it melts together, and it tastes so good.
Yeah. Wait, talking about melting together, I mean, like, I feel like that's all of us, you know? I mean, you're a melt of many things, you're a melt of many, and so am I, you know? Like, earlier you were saying, and I take it as a compliment when you said, you know, you feel like I'm quite different from the other Chinese people or that you met or whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
we do not belong to any label.
That's what I
Bohan.
mean. Right. I agree.
All your
I agree.
colleagues,
I agree.
they're unique.
But I feel like in order to get to a point where you're comfortable with that, is if you have to be comfortable with who you are first, right? Like, it's almost like you have to have structure to be structureless, right? Like to learn structure, to be free of structure.
But
right? So for me, like, you know, it helped me to learn about Asian American history, because for the longest time I was trying to just pass off as like, just I'm not part of the plan here, but I wanted to benefit from whatever was happening, right? So like, I couldn't just stand on the side and be like, oh, I'm actually Chinese, whatever is happening to Asian American community here got nothing to do with me. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, but I want Asian Americans to appreciate my work. So I was stuck in the middle, you know. I was like, well, I am Chinese because my family's all there, but this is where I found my confidence. This is where I found my second family. So let me like really like learn about all this stuff, you know. And even before COVID, even before all this like agenda of like, you know, empowering ourselves, I didn't realize for the longest time I was kind of doing that with my music already. Just trying to figure out like who am I? What does it mean to be Bohan in America or Bohan in China? Because this like concept of like too foreign for here, too foreign for home. I'm an American passport holder, right? But if I enter a room of corporate America, it's a bunch of white people. I'm clearly the foreigner, But when I go back to China, I look Chinese, but the way I dress, the way I talk, the way I interact, they're like, you must have spent some time overseas, So it's just in the beginning years when I was like, writing about myself, I was very conflicted. I was like, wow, now the more I write, the more confused I am.
Really?
Like which side do I belong? Like where am I? But now it's like a blessing. Now I look at it as like, I'm so blessed that I have both perspectives. Now let me learn from both sides. Let me see what I can grab for myself and make sense for myself. But until I was able to do that, like I felt pretty much caught between living in America, between the white America and the rest of America, which was black to me. And like growing up as like a Chinese kid, you're either on the white side or you're on the black side. There was no mention of Asian American community really, so for me it's like, until I figured out until I was confident about my own identity, it was hard for me to, like you said, feel like a world citizen. I only felt like a world citizen after I was sure of where I'm from and my story here, because we are all world citizens, at this point. Yeah, what are some of the stuff y'all are working on right now?
Well, working with fabrics, working with, I guess, trying to look at the old works, see how new they can become, refresh them,
right,
and put a different spin on it.
Yeah.
Well, I've been really excited working with Atmos, with surround sound.
Oh, Atmos, Dolby Atmos. Yeah. Wow, cool.
And so I have a lab coming up next week where I get to
test it out.
Oh, so
test out some of the ideas on a good system. Yeah.
So you've been sound designing specifically for the surround sound.
I think it's such an exciting frontier.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had did a song that the label that I put it out with, they put it through the Atmos thing, but they basically just took a regular song and then tried to mix it into that, and it sounded weird.
Oh, really?
It sounded like things got pulled apart in like a really weird way. Because I do think in order to like do that, you do kind of have to design for that.
Yeah, I think it's better to start from the beginning. To keep that in mind.
Yeah, for sure. Nina, you're saying you're working with texture. I mean, it makes sense that you're always bringing me, stuff like that. So, but specifically, like, are you making what kind of stuff are you doing with texture?
Oh, anything, little hangings or little fold out books or whatever. But they're like sketches. And sometimes I think the attention span, because of social media or that internet craze, you need more blocks of time. So hard to turn all the tempting gadgets off. Sure. And now, with fast food, we got to eliminate all that fast food because, I constantly munch.
So you're speaking to yourself.
Yes.
Get rid of the fast food so you don't reach for it.
Yes.
Well, are you on social media all the time? Are you scrolling?
You know what? I'm not really, but when you see the television, I'm a radio person.
Okay, yeah.
And I love to listen because your eyes get so tired. This kind of like looking at the camera or looking at the like editing.
Sure. Yeah.
So editing is, for me, is totally like being. If I had more eyes, then I could stretch my imagination and be more than 360.
Yeah, I hear that.
If that's possible. And we want to ask you how you did your drone shots.
Oh, I mean, that was just with a drone. What do you mean?
There were so many, how you captured everything
On what?
You must have had your camera people must have had like multiple eyes.
Wait, what are you
lenses.
talking about specifically?
Well, you had so many like videos where they were coming in and they were dancing with you. I guess I can remember all those.
I mean, that's
scenes.
all the credit to all the people that I work with, that do the film
Marvelous.
worker and stuff. Yeah,
Marvelous.
yeah. I mean, for me, I don't think I could have done anything that I've done today without the community that I have, and that's why I was asking about like what were some of the kind of people in y'all's lives, when y'all were like trying to be artists, and go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
Well, I was going to say one thing I haven't mentioned is that
Yeah.
we have a real interest in performance art,
Mm-hmm.
and we have a lot of friends that are performance artists, and we sometimes work with them. So that's been an inspiration to us.
That's awesome. I only know one person, Chris Urban. I read about him. He did he kind of nailed his hand or something like on a car.
Chris Burton.
Chris Burton. What did I say?
Oh,
I don't even,
but
he
he
nailed
is
himself on the
the
car.
father.
He had himself shot too.
I had to stop shot.
Yeah.
He's like the father of performance art. He's saying, right?
Well, he went to the extremes,
Right.
and we have friends that did the 1 year performance. He stayed in a cage and he clocked in for a year.
Oh Jesus, I didn't hear
And
that.
yeah,
Ting-ting.
take Taiwan.
Wow.
artists.
I mean, so what's his name? Who's that magician guy that that buries himself live? Rick, who's that magician guy that puts himself in a block of ice?
Oh yes, Zhang Huang.
No.
Yes.
No,
From
I'm
Beijing.
No, I'm thinking about someone more modern.
And Vegas.
Yeah, David Blaine.
Yeah.
Oh.
Because he puts himself through those he'll live in a glass box for a month, hung up in the air.
Amazing.
Kind of reminded me of I'm sure he's inspired by Chris Burden too. Wait, is that the name? Chris Burden?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, that's almost that's not even physical. That's strictly mental. Being in a cage for a year.
Yeah.
You said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. Imagine dating that
But
guy.
He did another piece tied to a woman with an 8-foot piece of rope for a year.
No way.
Yeah.
Somebody that he knew or
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine somebody
But
you had
it's
no idea who
very,
was.
very symbolic, and I think his message was, life is art.
Yeah. I one of my, sorry to cut you off. One of my favorite quotes by Rick Rubin, right? The producer. His quote is the masterpiece of an artist is not their best work. It's not the best stretch of their career. It's their whole life, And when I read that, it was one of the first few times that I read something about creativity, about art, that I was like, holy shit, I resonate with that, and it speaks to a lot of my behaviors of taking way too long with things sometimes, or, just stuff that I do that's not good for business, but I know it's good for myself. It's good for the process of the art, and I think those were the moments that give me the confidence to call myself an artist, when I make the decisions that I know is probably going to hurt me in the short run, but great in the long run, I think as artists, y'all been artists for most part of y'all lives. If y'all had to share one thing that this journey has given you, that's not, the surface stuff, the people that are saying oh, your stuff is great, your stuff is cool, not the shows that y'all do, what is something that this journey of creativity of being an artist has either taught y'all or gave y'all?
Well, I think it's the life, the people you meet, and the ideas you get exposed to is a tremendous reward.
Yeah. I like that. That's sometimes that's my answer too. It's the people that I meet, the places I get to see. But I never thought about the ideas that you get introduced to.
Yeah,
That's very true.
Not able to measure everything, Sometimes we get caught up with the kind of how much did I earn? How much?
How many likes I got on this?
Yeah, or more about financial, or how much self-worth sometimes, like I said, you're you're on this ship, or you're swimming in something, and like what you said, that it's part of you being like a pebble in the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But again, I think your life is a timeline. So the dots are moving, but you have to find the right orbits, the right kind of ways of including people, and sometimes you can't include everyone,
right?
And making peace with every part of your life and their lives is the key.
What this is one thing that you were saying earlier, how you were looking around, the black community was really doing the cool stuff that you were interested in.
Yeah, and the Latino,
and the Latinos,
and of course, some of the Asian groups were so influential, and they drift in and out.
But they were influential, but it wasn't the work that you were specifically interested in.
Yeah, it was.
It was. Okay.
I think it was more the conceptual, the ideas of, well, this came from a part of, whether, part of their family, their womanhood, or their
part of who they are.
Yeah. Or something that could have been an abstraction of where their forms, and the kind of like the possibilities. It's not like so much like a shape.
Yeah.
It's more free form.
Yeah. I think that's a great way of putting it, like a free form thing. I think, Lorin, you brought up 3 Days in Chengdu earlier. I mean, to me, that song was created not just by me. It was by like the moment and like everything that was happening in my life. It was my first time touring, and it took me back home to China. And I got to go to so many cities that I never been with my friends for the first time, and it was just, I mean, I don't have enough words to put into describe that experience. I think what ended up coming out was that song, and that song feels like formless. It's like 12 minutes long, like, this, and when you're talking about these people adding something from their origin, their story, their family, their womanhood, their whatever, one thing that Lorin was saying, you were saying that some of the work that excites you is bringing back some Chinese instruments and running it through some Western sounds. And to me, that's the melt that we're talking about. I often think about how incredible it is that Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan and Jet Li, they're really out here spreading Chinese culture, because like I remember I brought this like rap group from China. They're on Terminal 5 on stage, like, we're here to spread Chinese culture. And in that moment, I'm like, but where? Like they got dreads, like their music, their everything they're doing is, an adaptation of black culture, So, I've always wondered, I was like, what does it mean for me as a rapper to tell Asian American story, to tell Chinese American story, to tie my own identity into it, so I'm not just borrowing another art to tell another story, which I hear a lot, right? Like Asian rappers telling stories that almost like they're black, they're like they're telling the gang, telling the hood story, they're telling stories too, but then you find out they're not really like that. They just think that's what people want from rap music or hip hop music. For me, rap and music has always been storytelling, so it was always intuitive to just talk about my story, But I realized a lot of Asian Americans don't like that, like their priority is surviving in America. They don't want to be bombarded with like, oh, now I gotta think about what it means to be, let me just, like, what is it? I need to get an American name, cool. Well, I need to, not eat kimchi in the office, cool. What is it? Whatever I need to do to just kind of like, just coast and just exist, Right. And I respect that too. I do respect that too. Like, I think, we are on our own different journeys, Sure. I would love to, I think for me, the last time I saw y'all versus now, I feel a lot of personal growth, and this is something that I wanted to do, but I just never occurred to me that it was an important thing. But I would love to make some stuff with y'all, you know, like music,
let's do it.
you know, Lorin, and maybe you can help us do the visual side of things, you know. I think for me, you know, a big realization as I'm doing self-work is a lot of stuff I have been doing in the past is to please other people, you know. But I didn't start off making art because of that, you know. But as it went from a hobby of a teenager to not being able to find a job to this being my job, I've lost a lot of passion and spark in that process. It's brought me other stuff, you know, like brought me other stuff, but I'm looking to get back, you know, some of that earlier fun that I was having, you know. And I look at y'all and I just feel like y'all are just having fun, you know, being artists. Because otherwise y'all wouldn't be artists at this point.
Yeah, it's very exciting, and it's, but like you said, it can be so many drawbacks now.
Sure. But there's drawbacks to everything that you choose to do, right?
Yeah, but today even more so. So
you choose to be a banker.
So
I mean,
what
think about the drawbacks
right.
of a banker,
Oh, yeah,
right?
I know,
So
I know,
on the surface, you got no drawbacks, so you're making millions of dollars, right? But we all know the life that you choose to sacrifice to pick that life, right? Like,
for sure.
So, you know, for me, again, it's like what we were saying earlier. It's either suffer the pain of doing what I want, or suffer the pain because I know I'm not doing what I want.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
And I think the former is worth it. You know, and I have, you know, young artists DMing me. They're like, you know, Bohan, I'm 22. If music doesn't work out by the time I'm 27, I think I'm going to do something else. And my advice is like, look, if you already have a time to cap to when you fail, I know I don't have any other advice, you know, because I don't see an end date for me as an artist, right? Like I might not rap forever, but creativity is a part of my life, you know. The final question for Lorin. As an architect, what are some buildings that you find beautiful to you in New York? Okay, wait. First question. People make fun of the Freedom Tower because they think it looks like ass. How do you think about the Freedom Tower?
Well, you know, I did the 101st floor of the original World Trade One.
No way.
Yeah. And
wait, what do you mean you did that? Like you designed that?
Yeah, partially designed it, and it was an interior job.
Wow.
For one of the big accounting firms.
So one of the original Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Did it hurt when it went down?
Oh, it hurt.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Did it hurt because you were an American or because your work went down?
Everything.
Both.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Now the real question: what are some other buildings that in architectures in New York that you find, you know, like, oh man, I wish that's good. I wish I did that. You know.
Wow, that's a hard one.
Caltrava. We love
Heatherwick.
What is it? Heatherwick?
Yeah.
Let me write this down.
The vessel.
Yeah. It's right here on
the
Village.
pineapple looking.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fairly recent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But and that's more of like
and the vessel. We love that.
The vessel,
and
but
the
that's
Geary.
but those are like made to be a piece of art looking thing.
Yeah.
What about like a regular building?
Ford Foundation building.
Ford. Okay, let me look what that is. What about the what is it? The Flatiron building, the real skinny one that people obsess over?
that's
Do you like that?
Yeah.
I love that.
Cool. And Nina, like, you know, for you working with your hands on painting, on texture and all that, are there people that, you know, have heavily influenced what you do?
Yeah. I love
like one or two that you're like,
Oh, yeah.
that person, you know.
I mean, I love Noguchi.
Noguchi,
you know,
okay.
And
There's a museum, right? There's a Noguchi museum?
yeah,
Okay.
definitely. And you know, there's just so many that I'm totally in love with. You know, and makes me cry. I don't want to create anymore if I see them.
Yeah,
you know, and that's kind of
beauty is overwhelming.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean,
agree.
so many painters.
Yeah. Well, okay. What if you had to, you know, say like you could be like, boom, you travel back in time and you're talking to the 14-year-old Nina, and you had to show her one person that's like, yo, this person is dope.
Oh
You gotta
my
check it out.
gosh.
Who would that be?
You know, there's so many.
Pick
I'd
one.
be cheating
Pick one.
myself. I guess,
Oh, you already gave Noguchi, so give another
Faith
one.
Ringgold. You know,
Faith
Black,
Ringgold?
Yeah,
Faith.
Black Art. Faith Ringgold.
Faith Ringgold.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Ringgold.
I mean,
Faith Ringo.
there's so many.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's good enough. I mean, these are all stuff that I had no idea about, so I'm excited to look this up. Is anything else y'all want to share before we wrap this up?
I brought a painting
Oh yeah,
in there.
let's check this
Yeah,
out.
and
I'll take a photo of this and put it on the actual.
well, I mean, it's about it's
Here,
kind
talk
of like
into
a
the thing
crazy.
so
it's a little crazy.
I'll hold it up.
Yeah, it's a crazy painting that I just.
I can hold it up to the camera right here.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Oh,
Oh yeah, it's just people kind of like leisurely looking at what's going on today.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
When did you
Asian.
make this?
Oh, just
This
a
morning.
couple. No, that was during the AAPA kind of marches. You know, anti-hate thing. Yeah, more maybe. And
the height of the pandemic.
yeah, so it's like Asian USA.
This is Ching's book. What was her name again?
No, I Ching?
Oh yeah,
Oh, that's I Ching.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
There was like a
The
Chinese
way of-
Chinese American woman who was like an author that wrote some really good books too. She took her own life. Something Chin, forgot her.
Oh, she wrote about the massacre, right?
Yeah, she wrote about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
rape of Nanjing.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. What, I gotta think of her name.
Yeah, I remember.
But
her.
like she wrote that book. And
Yeah,
she, like,
and
took her
yeah,
life.
yeah. She was so totally, right.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just wanted to make sort of
Is
kind
this,
of
can I
a.
keep this? Or is this something that you...
Well,
No,
I'll make
okay,
you
I'm
another
kidding.
one.
No,
I'll
I'm
make you
kidding.
another one.
No,
I'll make
this
another
is
one.
great.
But
This is
but it's about and I made actually a flag, an Asian American flag. It said, "Heroes Wanted," Asian American Heroes Wanted, because we don't have an Asian American flag.
Right.
And that's kind of sad. We have a Black American flag by
Right.
David Hammonds, and many of the pop artists like Jasper Johns made a pop American flag. That's like
Yeah.
concentric flags.
What about this?
And
this,
that's
what
about
this
peace.
piece?
I did
Yeah.
that because I felt, a lot of Asians are sort of like in flux.
Mm.
There's a lot of the South Koreans and with the comfort women. So there's a message about that,
Mm.
and they're not so friendly with Japan, the Japanese whatever regime,
Right.
which is totally what's going on.
Right.
Then there's different areas of Muslim
Yeah.
thought and Hindu thought, and then the different segments of Buddhism. And I guess I'm reading too much, when I see the world news. And I see it filtered down, when I go to Queens, I see Tibetan and other segments of the minority people there. But they're not minorities, maybe. I shouldn't even use that term.
Sure.
So, we're in the middle of everything too. We are kind of like when people look at you, they say, "Where are you from?" Because they want to know what you stand for.
Mm.
What do you believe in?
Sure. Yeah.
And you gotta snap your, head to this march.
Yeah. And we all believe in the same thing, right?
Yeah, we believe in
Right.
some peace.
Right. right.
Peace and
But I think the
come
main difference is
harmony.
a main difference is that people get into fighting is like how we reach there, right? Like people all want the same thing, right? We all want happiness, we want better stuff for our children,
yeah.
but we think the way of getting there is different, and that's what we fight about.
Yeah, exactly. So,
All right, well, Nina, Lorin, the Kuo-Roser studio, I appreciate y'all so much. For people that are watching and listening, I'm going to put y'all's information down here so people can go and follow y'all and look y'all up. I've learned so much today, and I'm honestly very inspired, my life is full of people who are stopping what they love because life is getting in the way. So to be able to watch y'all as the manifestation of loving what y'all do, this has been an inspiration. And I thank y'all for y'all time.
Oh,
and I thank everybody listening. And till next time.
thank you.
Thank you.
Cool.
Bo.
Awesome.